The average American home inspection costs between $300 and $500 and takes about 3 hours. Most buyers treat that report like a safety net. A professional walked through the house, checked everything, and signed off. But on page 1 of the contract they signed, before the inspector even walked through the door, there is a clause most buyers never read. If the inspector misses something, their liability is limited to the cost of the inspection itself. A $400 inspection, a $40,000 foundation problem, 1 paragraph of fine print. That is the deal most Americans unknowingly agreed to. The language that defines a home inspection is not buried in legalese. It is printed in plain sight on every contract and industry standard. The American Society of Home Inspectors, ASHI, states that the inspection shall be visual and non-invasive. InterNACHI, the other major certifying body, describes it as a visual inspection performed by looking at, feeling, and listening to components without demolition or invasive testing. Both organizations set the baseline. Inspectors observe only what is readily accessible. They do not open walls, they do not move insulation, and they do not dismantle fixtures. If a crawl space is blocked, a panel is screwed shut, or an attic hatch is painted over, the inspector notes the limitation and moves on. This is not a technicality. It is the core of the business model. A standard inspection is designed to minimize risk for the inspector, not to guarantee the condition of the house. One independent inspector put it bluntly: a home inspection is like a doctor diagnosing from across the room. No stethoscope, no x-rays, just what you can see and hear. That means hidden mold, a cracked sewer line, or a failing foundation can go undetected. Not because of negligence, but because the rules forbid looking any deeper. The contract spells this out. The inspector's liability is limited to the inspection fee. The report is a snapshot of visible conditions on the day of inspection. Buyers often believe they are purchasing a guarantee. In reality, they are buying a limited observation, one that is intentionally scoped to protect the inspector from the kinds of losses that can devastate a homeowner. Before any discussion of liability caps or arbitration, the inspection's own boundaries have already shifted the risk onto the buyer. A single paragraph in nearly every home inspection contract draws a hard line between buyer expectations and legal reality. The limitation of liability clause, rarely read aloud and often signed in haste, states that the inspector's liability for any claim arising out of the inspection is limited to the total inspection fee paid by the client. In practice, this means that whether the inspector overlooks a $40,000 foundation crack or a $25,000 sewer collapse, the maximum exposure is the inspection FEE, often only $350 or $450. This is not a quirk of a few firms. A 2023 review of contracts from more than 50 companies in 22 states found fee cap language in over 90% of agreements. In 13 states, including California, Texas, Florida, and Illinois, statutes or case law specifically recognize and enforce these clauses, provided they are disclosed in writing and equal to the inspection fee. Where disputes arise, courts have repeatedly sided with inspectors. In Chicago, a buyer who sued for $45,000 in undisclosed structural repairs was directed to binding arbitration, where the liability cap, just $450, stood unchallenged. Arbitration clauses appear alongside the liability cap in nearly all contracts, waiving the right to a jury trial and funneling complaints into private proceedings. Consumer rights attorneys describe this as a systemic shield. The contract does not merely limit exposure, it transforms the inspection from a source of real protection into a legal firewall for the inspector. Even when buyers imagine they are purchasing peace of mind, the fine print ensures that the risk of hidden defects remains firmly on their shoulders. These provisions are not accidental. They are the product of industry guidance, licensing statutes, and a long record of court decisions upholding the inspector's immunity, so long as the clause is clear and the fee is paid. A single email from a real estate agent can steer the course of a home purchase. In one message, a realtor recommends an inspector who is known for keeping the process smooth. The implication is clear: a report that won't threaten the deal. On camera, a seasoned agent puts it plainly. He says, "I have a short list of inspectors who don't make mountains out of molehills. They keep things moving." For buyers, this referral carries weight. According to industry anecdotes, more than 70% of buyers use the inspector suggested by their agent. The National Association of Realtors offers guidance on preferred vendor lists, encouraging agents to recommend only those who are licensed and insured. But the system leaves room for subtle pressure. Inspectors who raise red flags too often risk being dropped from these lists. One independent inspector describes it as a quiet threat. He says, "If you kill a few deals, you stop getting calls." Preferred inspectors understand what's expected. They know that a cautious report, one that sticks to visible, non-invasive checks and avoids speculation, will keep them in business. The incentive is not to dig deeper. The incentive is not to find what isn't obvious. The liability cap in the contract means that even if something major is missed, the inspector's risk is limited to the inspection fee. But the buyer's risk is not. This arrangement doesn't just shield inspectors. It aligns their interests with agents who need the sale to close. The result is a referral pipeline that rewards limited scrutiny and leaves buyers with the illusion of protection. As one independent inspector puts it, the system isn't built for the buyer, it's built for the sale. A standard home inspection leaves some of the most expensive risks entirely outside its scope. Mold, radon, asbestos, lead paint, termites, sewer line failures, and chimney flue damage. None of these are included in the baseline service. The contract spells out these exclusions, but most buyers never see the list until after the fact. Mold may be hiding behind drywall, but unless a buyer pays for separate air sampling, the inspector is not required to mention it. Radon, an invisible carcinogen, is tested only when the buyer orders it as an extra. Pest and termite inspections are usually a separate visit, sometimes handled by a different company. Sewer lines, buried beneath the yard, are not scoped unless the buyer requests and pays for a camera inspection. Even the chimney flue, a leading source of hidden fire hazards, is off limits without a specialist's scope. The patchwork of state regulation only deepens this vulnerability. In nearly 20 states, no license is required to call oneself a home inspector. Where licensing does exist, the bar is low. 40 to 120 hours of classroom training, often less than 3 weeks. By contrast, a licensed electrician or plumber completes years of apprenticeship before working alone. The result is a system where critical threats are routinely missed, not because of inspector negligence, but because the rules and training allow it. The fine print and the regulatory gaps together create a landscape where unseen dangers and the cost of missing them land squarely on the buyer. 5 red flags, hiding in plain sight, can turn a home purchase into a financial sinkhole. Grading and drainage issues often go unaddressed in inspection reports, yet a single invoice for regrading and French drain installation can reach $6,200. Inadequate attic ventilation and insulation, rarely examined beyond a cursory glance, can mean $2,000 to $5,000 in repairs to prevent mold and ice dams. Electrical panels from legacy brands like Federal Pacific or Zinsco, known fire hazards, are frequently missed or simply noted as original, leaving buyers on the hook for $2,200 to $4,500 to replace a panel after closing. HVAC systems, if over 14 years old, carry a 60% chance of failure within 3 years. And replacement costs, including ductwork, often total $5,000 to $12,000. Improper flashing around windows and doors, a detail that escapes a visual-only check, can lead to water intrusion, requiring $1,000 to $3,000 in repairs. These are not hypothetical numbers. Contractor invoices from recent sales document $9,800 for an HVAC replacement, $3,100 for a new panel, and $6,200 for drainage correction. The inspection report, limited by contract to what is visible and accessible, cannot shield buyers from these expenses. The $400 fee buys a snapshot, not a safety net. For every missed defect, the buyer stands alone against repair bills that can eclipse the cost of the inspection by a factor of 10 or more. A truly protective inspection package is not a mystery or a luxury reserved for the cautious few. The numbers are straightforward. A standard visual inspection covers the basics, but the add-ons, radon testing for $150, mold sampling for $300, and a sewer line camera for $150, transform the process from a snapshot into a real risk assessment. A comprehensive package, typically $1,200 to $1,400, covers the hidden threats that the standard report ignores. In practical terms, that investment is less than 0.5% of the average home price, yet it can yield a return of 10 to 50 times the cost if a single hidden defect is uncovered before closing. Buyers who want to sidestep the referral pipeline and the legal firewall can start by searching independent inspector directories. ASHI and InterNACHI list qualified professionals who are not beholden to any agent's preferred vendor list. When the contract arrives, the script is simple. Before I sign, I'd like the liability cap raised to $10,000, or at least the purchase price. If that's not possible, I'll need to consider other inspectors. For add-ons, transparency matters. Please include radon, mold, sewer, and chimney inspections as separate line items. These phrases cost nothing, but they force the conversation into the open, where the fine print loses its power. The goal is not to catch anyone off guard, but to make the risk explicit, and to refuse the illusion of protection that comes with a signature and a handshake. Today's inspection contract is a shield for the industry, not a guarantee for the buyer. A $500 snapshot stands against defects that can cost 10, even 100 times more. The gap between perception and protection remains vast, and every buyer inherits the risk. What would real accountability look like?